Sean O'Malley has become the bantamweight champion with his last win against Aljamain Sterling. With that being said, I think it is fair to say that Sean O'Malley most definitely had one of the easiest roads to the title that we've ever seen. And before you click off, let me tell you why. It is clear that Dana White has at least some type of narrative that he would like to be painted in the UFC. And whether he would like to admit it or not, the Dana White privilege is a very real thing. There is most certainly a storyline that he would like to follow, and although he cannot fully script or fix the UFC fights, he can sure lay an outstanding outline. With certain stars in the UFC just simply being more entertaining than others and drawing a ton more revenue for the company, these fighters most certainly get better fight opportunities for their career. Conor McGregor had essentially one of the greatest rises to the title that we've ever seen, getting to headline and be the main event of his own card in just his third pro bout. Conor would annihilate Marcus Brimage, future champion Max Holloway, Diego Brandao, and with him knocking off featherweight and UFC vet Dustin Poirier in a build-up that might have been more explosive than we've seen from either man before. The stars were aligning for Conor to finally catch the all-time featherweight great, Jose Aldo. The UFC was so invested in McGregor that they would even set a world tour for the upcoming McGregor vs. Aldo bout. And this world tour would also visit 5 countries and doing tons of press and media for the fight coming up. And yet right before, of course, Aldo has to pull out to injury. This would leave McGregor faced with his hardest challenge yet in Team Alpha Male's wrestling pro, Chad Mendes. Mendes was a brutal and physical wrestler who aimed to pound his opponents in top mount. So this did kind of put Conor in a tricky situation. But the UFC wanted Conor to be the champion so much that they would make this bout an interim belt. So that way when Jose would come back, he would have to fight Conor. But still, Conor had to win the fight. Yet the reason why it was so tricky is due to the fact that McGregor was only training for Aldo, who has a completely different fighting background than Chad Mendes. And on a couple weeks notice, not only is it a challenge for Mendes, but it is a challenge for McGregor as well. And yet McGregor pulled it off in one of the greatest fashions we've ever seen. McGregor showed that he could not only get up, but he would also TKO finish Mendes in the second round, ensuring his fight with Aldo for the belt when he recovered from his fucked up rib. And McGregor would absolutely speak into existence the sequence that he would use to take out Aldo. The legend of Conor nowadays is something no fighter could ever recreate. In today's day, almost every UFC fighter sees the meaning and importance of doing some kind of self-promotion and or branding. Conor was just the first to do it on that scale and back up every single thing he said. Well, except for the bout with Khabib. He didn't back that up. When anyone comes off and tries to do it now, it just kind of comes off as fake or phony or tried before, you know? Even when superstars like Israel Adesanya talk smack in their own way, I think a majority of the crowd looks at them in a kind of side-eye kind of manner.
He knows I put him on skates last time. And this time when I put you on skates, I'm gonna leave you frozen like Elsa.
Or might think it's just corny and weird. Conor had the accent, the witty remarks, the fighting style, the look, and the demeanor of someone you truly wanted to get behind. Conor was Dana's biggest cash cow since Jones and Rousey, and quite frankly he's needed another since Rousey went to WWE and Jones and Conor rarely fight in the UFC ever. But that's just the thing. Sean O'Malley is no Conor McGregor. And obviously Sean is in no way, shape, or form trying to be Conor McGregor. But that doesn't mean that the UFC doesn't want him to be. When looking at Sean O'Malley, the first thing the public gets is the shock factor. And if you know anything about social media, using the shock factor is just as it sounds. People are enticed to click and watch based on being shocked by things they don't normally see. Sean has his entire body inked in some pretty cool tattoos, I must admit, and rainbow multicolor hair. So to most kids nowadays, that's what's in. This theory was most certainly proven by the now faded away SoundCloud era, where many rappers and artists just got their start by, well, just looking and sounding and being different in general. And after shocking the mainstream media with their odd looks and music, they had a career off of it. But back to Sean. Now let's break down Sean's road to the title. Since Sean O'Malley did get his start in the UFC in Dana White's Contender Series, we won't really count those bouts as those opponents aren't really too qualified for, you know, the actual UFC. And we will only consider his official UFC bouts. The UFC's bantamweight division is one that is most stacked in most recent years, with fighters like Aljamain Sterling, Peter Yan, Corey Sandhagen, Rob Font, and even the young and coming Saeed and Umar Nurmagomedov. Yet in the build-up leading up to Sean's fight against Aljo, Sean would face Andrei Sukumath first. Sukumath was 1-2 when Sean did fight him for the first time in the UFC, so I could see this as a reasonable bout for, you know, the UFC to give to Sean to kind of break him in and kind of give him some experience but not kill him off immediately. Although eventually Andrei Sukumath would go 2-5 just to kind of show the true level of skill that he was at the time. Now coming into his second bout, Sean would take on Jose Quinones, who was actually a very decent 5-2 at the time, so the UFC was definitely giving him at least some sort of a challenge at this point. Then they tossed the old man Eddie Wineland at Sean, and it wasn't a very good matchup. Eddie Wineland is easily way past his prime since he has literally been in the UFC since 2006 and he's 39 years old, and he literally has an official record in the UFC of 11-12. So just to kind of show, you know, the level of talent that he's at as well, No offense. Now at this point, this is definitely where I started to feel like things got a little bit fishy in terms of Sean O'Malley's matchmaking, and this could either come from his management side, or it could also come from, Hunter Campbell and Dana's, matchmaking side as well, in the war room, as they say it. Now, Sean O'Malley gets matched up with Chito Vera, and in my opinion, this was the first time that everyone was like, okay, Sean O'Malley is gonna get tested in a UFC fight. But of course, Sean breaks his ankle when the fight was actually a lot closer than we all thought it would be. Now, it was extremely unfortunate that Sean did get injured in this fight, because we all wanted to see what Sean could really do if he really was a contender. And going up against Marlon Chito Vera, who was most certainly a contender in the bantamweight division at that time, this would go down as Sean's first loss in the UFC technically, although he never counted it as a loss since he, broke his leg, which I get. But I mean, hey, if you lost, you lost. So Sean would then go backward and fight Thomas Alameda, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu specialist who was on a 3-fight losing streak. And after fighting Sean and losing to Sean, he would never return to the UFC again. So I mean, yeah, I guess. One could say, yeah, Sean is absolutely demolishing all of his opponents. And that is true, but he is not doing it against any top 5 ranked fighters, and he's also not being tested. The UFC would then sacrifice a completely fresh and lime green haired Chris Moutinho, who had literally not fought in the UFC a single time. And after racking up another loss after Sean O'Malley dribbled all over him and beat the dog shit out of him, he also would never return to the UFC ever again. And I swear these two were only matched up due to the fact that Sean O'Malley and this kid have colorful fucking hair. Shit absolutely made no sense. I mean, there was no competition. But that's kind of what I'm trying to say, is that's the UFC's way of just kind of building star power by allowing some of these fighters to knock out some of these no-name fighters, to just get highlights and spectacular knockouts, just to kind of build their stardom, to in turn get them more chances of getting to the belt and have more revenue sales in return. Now, Raulian Paiva, he was definitely on a 3-fight winning streak, and he was on his way to becoming a contender in the UFC's bantamweight division, so they thought to test him against Sean O'Malley. Now we have another ranked fighter that Sean O'Malley would get matched up with, and of course, he would poke the absolute shit out of the eyeball. Not intentionally, of course, but either way, Pedro Munoz versus Sean O'Malley would also be rendered a no contest due to the fact that Sean O'Malley poked the shit out of his eye. Now again, while of course Sean O'Malley did not mean to, it was extremely unfortunate due to the fact that, again, for competitive MMA fans, we want to see Sean O'Malley get tested. The hype is there, and the kids love him for who he is and the highlight finishes that he gets. But can you beat the best of the best? And Pedro Munoz, he's not the best, but he's definitely fought some of the best and has put on great performances. Although on his way to the matchup with Sean O'Malley, he was also coming off a loss from Dominic Cruz and a loss from Jose Aldo. Then out of absolutely fucking nowhere, Dana White gives the green light to Peter Yan versus Sean O'Malley with title implications for the winner. What the fuck? Like, how does that even happen? How does that even happen? Can you tell how? He's fought nobody and he gets a shot at the #1 contender. It makes no sense. It makes no sense with him beating absolutely nobody. And I'm not trying to be a hater or anything. This is the same thing we have with Khamzat Chimaev getting a title shot with Sean Strickland. It makes zero sense. He's fought nobody. He has fought nobody. Now this fight I definitely want to really break down, because like myself, I know many other people believe that Sean O'Malley was not only gifted this matchup, but was also gifted the victory as well. With Yan being a previous bantamweight champion and the #1 bantamweight contender, he was certainly looking to get back to the belt, of course after the whole Aljamain Sterling fiasco. And I'm sure Yan absolutely felt that the UFC was trying to make a name for Sean off of his credibility, and at least he certainly fought like he did. With all that being said, the fight was extremely back and forth, with both men going tit for tat, going blow for blow. But Yan would rack up almost 6 minutes of clinch and ground control time and hit 60% of his significant strikes to Sean O'Malley's 51%. And even Sean looked extremely surprised when his hand was raised in the decision. And I know everyone else, including myself, was also shocked. Now we all know judging in the UFC is absolutely fucking horrid. And with that being said, I certainly believe that Dana White in the UFC wanted Sean, most certainly, to get to the belt so that way they can make him a new cash cow and get a title shot against Aljamain Sterling. Now with Aljo really coming up in conversation, Aljamain Sterling was never the most popular champion among the champions of recent years, and his pay-per-view numbers are some of the lowest of all the champions today. So with that being said, you can clearly see how Dana White would want to do some renovation to the bantamweight division, which we previously have seen this story with Demetrius Johnson, being one of the most winningest champions of all time, yet having some of the most lowest pay-per-view numbers and Dana White not having any of it. Please also take into account that this division is one of the most stacked in the UFC today. Again, with the likes of Dominic Cruz, Corey Sandhagen, Marlon Chito Vera, Rob Font, the Nurmagomedovs, Merab Dvalishvili, however you say his name, The division is stacked, and yet Sean literally fought like none of them. Like he didn't fight any of them. Like 0 ranked fighters. I really believe that the UFC did everything they could to give Sean O'Malley the best chances possible and not letting him get killed off by any of the other top-ranked bantamweight division fighters. But in the lightweight division, it is a true dogfight and everybody is fighting everybody. Either way, Sean would get the title shot, and leading up to the event, Sean's popularity was exploding, with Sean partnering with the UFC and the UFC becoming an official sponsor of Sean's brand. Sean would also get his Sugar Sean logo plastered on the octagon, and the only fighter to ever have their logo on the octagon is Conor McGregor. And of course, Dana White's wishes come true, and Sean O'Malley does knock out Aljamain Sterling. Now let me just say this, if you beat the champion, you're the champion, and I give you 100% respect and admiration for beating the champion, because that is something extremely hard to do, and I commend you for chasing your goals and your dreams like that, right? So I'm in no way trying to take away from Sean's winningness, or whatever. I'm just trying to say that Sean O'Malley had one of the easiest roads to get to the title ever. Like, this video was not made to discredit him. I'm trying to point out the facts. And especially in terms of Dana White privilege, the matchmaking that this kid got was some of the best ever in terms of his fighting styles. Now, not only did Sean take out Aljamain Sterling, but Dana doesn't even want to give Aljamain Sterling another rematch, which makes no sense, as Aljamain Sterling has defended his belt multiple times, and we've seen that champions who defend their belt multiple times, 9 times out of 10 get a rematch. We've seen that with Usman, and we've also seen that with Israel Adesanya. And I honestly think that due to the stylistic nature of Aljamain Sterling with his extremely backpacky wrestling background, Dana White does not even want to give the chance to do that to Sean O'Malley, his new star. Dana would swiftly move Sean O'Malley in a different direction, into a different opponent, to fight Marlon Chito Vera, who predominantly likes to fight standing up in his feet, which again is much more of Sean's style. And yes, Sean O'Malley's pay-per-view numbers are some of the best ever. Dana White can say there is no such thing as Dana White privilege, but I absolutely beg to differ, with Sean having everything fall into place perfectly for him to be the UFC's biggest star.